Hi, I'm super excited to be sharing with you a little bit about my work in this online series that's been organized by BasaiTech, trying to expose everybody to some of the interesting jobs that we're seeing in the tech space. So, Lerato Mphaka. My name is Lerato Mphaka. I am a UX UI designer. I'm also a UX UI facilitator at the Learning Mindset Foundation. A lot of the time when we're asked to kind of summarize what a UX or UI designer does, I always kind of center it around users. So my primary objective as a UX or UI designer is to really understand users of digital products, right? It's to understand who they are. So by understanding who they are, we try to create what we call representations of a user population, and we call these user personas. So we will create a user persona and say, oh, our possible user is Mr. Tabo or Me Tabang, and these are her pet peeves, these are his pet peeves when it comes to the usage of digital products. The other thing that I'm really interested in as a UX UI designer is around their user contexts. So I want to understand exactly what this user persona's life is and where they're likely to use this particular product. And this is where we kind of start trying to create user interfaces or digital user interfaces that are very responsive to people's context. So for example, until very recently, it was such a nightmare for you to lose connection when you are sending an email, right? You would have to start all over again because for some reason the email would be lost. This was actually a user interface design flaw. And because user experience designers started to really understand that some users have contexts where they're not able to have access to broadband throughout, they decided to create an elegant save in their email browser, such that even when you do lose connection, your email goes directly into drafts and you don't have to start all over again to capture that email. So UX designers are really also interested in trying to understand the usage context of a digital product so that they design it to be as elegant as possible and to respond in a pro user way as opposed to a pro application way. For me, it's also about, how does UX translate when people start using more and more traditionally non-digital products? So what is UX going to look like in a microwave setting, because we're now creating smart microwaves? What is it going to look like when we start doing smart fridges? What is it going to look like in a connected home space? What is it going to look like when we start wearing some of our digital devices, as we already are with people that have smartwatches? So it's really about understanding how user interfaces are going to morph as people's lives also morph, and as digital products that are being designed also morph to suit people's changing lives. A typical day for me normally is really around where I am in terms of a product design life cycle, right? So if we are just at the beginning of trying to create a new product, I'm always preoccupied with user research, right? And there is never enough research when it comes to users. So whether I'm looking at desktop research by way of what's the latest design, what are the latest design specifications, are we still using the power of 3, are we still using a grid design, what are people saying about digital products in app stores or in app stores primarily. So I always pore over user reviews, trying to figure out exactly what people like about a digital product and what they don't like about it. If we are kind of at a stage where we've designed a prototype and we're now interested in testing out that prototype, my day will primarily center around user interviews or observations, just putting users in a room and actually exposing them to this prototype and saying, please give me your thoughts, or just having conversations with users about, whether or not they like this particular digital interface, whether they like this button over there as opposed to over there. So it's really just about getting a feel for whether or not this particular design will be acceptable in the market. Once we've launched a product and that product is now in, the Google Play Store, or it's in the App Store, my preoccupation is obviously now going back to user reviews. Are people uptaking this product? If they are, then I simply then just go to the user reviews and check out whether or not they like this particular product, they're deriving utility quite quickly, or there's still a learning curve that they need to get through, and then I need to obviously come back and tweak that product, or maybe even take out or release frequently asked questions on a website, etc., etc. It's also about, you know, looking at usage reports that are coming out when people start using the particular application. So these days it's very easy to kind of hook data analytics to your app, so that when people are traversing through a user path, you're able to see whether or not that's an intuitive path, whether that path leaves users at a dead end, whether a user kind of pauses at a specific point in the digital product, so that you can always go back and kind of tweak with your developers to make the usage of that product a little bit seamless. Well, it really again depends on where I am in terms of the product design lifecycle. So if we're really just starting and we're trying to craft user personas, my software of choice is always just a normal word processor. So MS Word works relatively well for creating user personas. When you want to expose your user personas to your executive suite and you just want feedback, obviously from your exco, whether or not this is the right direction, I will then just switch to any presentation software. So whether it's MS PowerPoint, I'm actually a fan of Prezi, just because the presentation style is so cool and it allows you to play around with it. But it's really just about how do I present this information to an end user or to a stakeholder such that they are aware of my thoughts and they're aware of the general direction. When I start kind of prototyping, it really depends on whether or not I want to do a low fidelity prototype, so something that's just incredibly basic. And I can go as basic, was rudimentary, as a paper prototype, right? So just draw a mobile device and then start putting paper buttons on it and asking people to move those paper buttons around and stuff like that. If I've gotten to a point where I feel invested enough in the project to do a full-on high fidelity prototype, then my design software of choice is always InVision Design Studio. I think it is incredible. It's such a comprehensive tool. It allows you to do quite a lot. It allows you to also build a certain level of functionality into your tools, so that when someone is actually kind of testing it out, they feel like they're really going through the motions of an actual usable app. So I really love InVision Design Studio. Check it out. When I've kind of like gone through the process of creating this product, now I'm really at the review stage. It again goes back to, how do I get stakeholders to understand? So it'll still be about presentations, it'll be about a documented report on usage. So again, I go back to my word processors, or I go back to my presentation software. I think I'm in love, and to a certain degree I think I'm also obsessed with human beings. So the fascination for me is always trying to understand people, and I think it's that fascination that's actually made me realize that people are incredibly genius creatures. I don't know how to put it. Even when you think as a designer, you've designed a product for a specific function, say a messaging app, people find very interesting ways to use that app. I mean, look at how WhatsApp has evolved. I mean, WhatsApp is actually now a neighborhood a security watch. People get onto that app, they create a group, and they start watching movements, taking pictures, showing suspicious activity in the neighborhood. People are now kind of conducting cooperatives on that app. So it's so interesting the way people use digital applications to suit their lives, as opposed to how we kind of sometimes are very idealistic about what the purpose of the app is supposed to be. I think the ultimate decider of that will always be a human being, and that's why I'm so fascinated about users. And so you'll always find me kind of digging a little bit deeper and finding out, so why do these people not like this app? Why are they using it this way, etc. It's always so much fun for me. Quite a number of challenges. I think as a designer, there's such a a love-hate relationship. As much as I love users, sometimes you're just like, oh, because the more you develop an application, the more you fall in love with it as a designer. And there's always a little bit of, emotional attachment to a product, even when users are not receiving it well. So that's really the big challenge, I think, for all designers, is how do I detach my emotions from a product and view it as objectively as possible when people don't receive it well? And how do I take that feedback and actually make this product work for people that are using it? The other big challenge for us is obviously the fact that the field changes so much. We still have the universal debate between flat designs and skeuomorphs. But the big challenge, and I think the big trend, is that digital devices are moving into what we would call non-digital spaces. So they're moving into homes, they're moving into clothing. And I think the challenge for us is now trying to switch our mindsets to actually saying, I'm not designing for a flat surface. I'm actually designing for something that's oval. I'm designing for something that's going to be worn. I'm designing for something that's going into the water, for example. I'm designing something that's going to be on hard surfaces because it's a sensor in someone's shoe. So these are some of the interesting challenges that we're seeing. The more we create, the Internet of Things, and the more people are surrounding themselves with connected devices, the more we have to think about what type of a user interface is likely to make the best impact when somebody is looking at a smartwatch versus when they're looking at their mobile phone. From a qualification standpoint, UX design is actually a derivative of what we used to call human-computer interaction. And for all of us that maybe have a computer science background or an information systems or information technology background, this is likely a course that you would probably do in your third year as you start kind of preparing yourself to do your fourth year projects, etc. I would also say that, have that type of a background, but also beef it up with a professional certification. I mean, the field is relatively new, and I think as it keeps changing, you kind of need to keep abreast of those skills. So always try to find courses that augment your skill. There are quite a number, I think, that are already available. There's some on Udemy and Coursera. There are also some that are being offered through the University of Cape Town. And these are quite comprehensive and can actually get you started. You don't necessarily have to have a computer science background to be interested in UX design. I've seen people who have business analysis backgrounds actually move into the space of UX and UI. I've seen people that have done ethnography. I've seen people that have done just pure social scientists. The real kind of I think background you need to have is obviously curiosity about users, but also augment your skills so that you understand the technical terminology. My final parting shot is that first and foremost, I think UX design is becoming increasingly important. And it's becoming increasingly important in the conversation about technology and diversity. When we look at some of the way that applications are designed, we start picking out that they were designed with a specific user in mind and are not as accommodating of other groups or classes of human beings on this planet. And this is why we need a diverse skill set in the UX design space, so that the applications we come up with do not have inherent bias, do not have gender bias, do not have racial bias, and they're easily acceptable in a society as diverse as ours, right? But also, UX design is about deep user empathy. If you are not necessarily somebody who is tolerant of other people's usage of stuff, this might not be the field for you. If you are always constantly curious about, I wonder why they used it that way, or I wonder if this product is something that people would like, then this is probably the field that will actually help you refine some of those deeper questions that you have. Being a UX UI practitioner myself, I just want to say I cannot wait to welcome you to the field. It is going to be even more exciting with you in it. We're looking forward to having you, but importantly, we're looking forward to you changing the world of design. Thanks.